Hello everyone! Today I have a surprise. I will give the introduction to the fifth OPPO tool, the subsector value chain mapping and analysis. So we have been sharing already 4 other OPPO tools, but today we focus on value chain mapping and we will tell you how to do this. Shortly about the tool supports farmers how to systematically map value chains of a particular subsector. So we go into detail how you do subsector value chain analysis and how to identify challenges, opportunities and strategies for farmers and their organizations to upgrade their value chains. So when do you use this tool? It's to better understand value chains that farmers are part of and to explore how to better create added value. For whom and why? Producers and producer organizations, SMEs, processors and or traders, and also other stakeholders like governments and agroeconomic development agencies who want to improve rural peoples and women and youth livelihoods. The subsector and diversity of value chains. So in the agriculture economy there are different sectors. So you have crops, horticultural, livestock and fisheries. And in those sectors we have subsectors. There would be specific crops like taro, breadfruit, poultry and tilapia fish farming. And these are subsectors. So every agricultural subsector is comprised of many value chains, and each specific linkage of primary producers is to the end consumer via intermediary and value-adding activities in the value chain. In this presentation, we will introduce you to the actors. Who are the value chain actors? What are the value chains, the activities that create value, transactions and transmissions, and subsectors and value chains, how to do the mapping. And then we will go into specific examples and also key questions to ask.
Hello, another surprise. This is Melike. I will continue with the presentation that was started by Jana. And I would like to introduce you to the value chain actors. This is the first step we take also when we do our exercise. And we need to know who they are to be able to understand what value-adding activities they do in the remaining part of the presentation. This is a very basic value chain where you have the producers. All value chain starts with the producers. I will check if I have a pointer. Yes. So it starts with the producers and it always ends with the consumers. And in between you would have the traders, retailers, and many other actors depending on the commodity that you would be doing the analysis for. This is a start. We see actors, we see some kind of a flow, but of what we clarify as long as we go with our steps. We do not see the operations yet in this one. We only see actors, and some of them are not even visible, nor do we see the value created by any of them. But we will come into that in more details in the coming slides. Value chains always from producers to consumers, like I already said. The producers organization, and it can have many different actors along the way. To finally reach the end consumers. And even the end consumers can be divided into different categories, so they can represent different actors. To get to the consumers, there are many intermediate actors such as traders, processors, wholesalers and retailers. Farmer organizations that buy from their members are also on the value chain. Another a bit more clear example starts from farmers, can go to the farmer organization. It is not always the case because sometimes you might not have the farmer organization in between where the farmer sells directly to the traders. but then the processors, the wholesalers, the retailers, all the value adding activity at each steps will reach out by the end the consumers. The definition of value chains. In agriculture, a value chain is a sequence of related productive and commercial activities. From primary production to local trade to processing and storage to marketing, wholesale and retail to the consumption of the final product. Actually, it's exactly as we show it in this direct line. But is it going to be always direct? This is something to see a bit later. As the product moves, the costs increase because of the value creation along the chain. To give you again an example for here. For instance, is the farmer transporting themselves to the traders or to the farmer organization, or is the farmer organization arranging the transport of the produce to get it to the traders? All these value-adding activities are having some costs that are paid by this or that actor along the value chain. The product becomes more attractive for the next step on the value chain and the price increase. So the price increases because of the activity that has been undertaken and has a value, has a cost, and on top of that, because you provide the new services, the price increases. Value chains in agriculture are having different ways of being expressed. Sometimes you would hear from field to fork, that would be more for produce from arable lands. For dairy, you would hear grass to glass, which would be the milk in this case. For fisheries, we would hear from fish to dish. So again, from the producers to the consumers. Always from the producer to the consumer. Value chain and supply chains. In the agricultural sector, different terms are used for chains, but the ones that are the most commonly used are the value chain and the supply chain. But what is the difference between the value chain and the supply chain? The supply chain focuses on how product moves from supplier to buyers and finally to the end consumers. In the supply chain, you cannot see the added value along the chain until it reaches out the end consumer. However, in the value chain, we focus more on the activities that create value as the product moves forward to the end consumers. And this is the value chain that we will be focusing on this presentation.
Hello, I'm the third in row, and the third is talking about the second step. We've seen the actors, and the second step in drawing value chains is to look at the value adding activities. Here you see in different colors different players with different value adding activities. And this shows that actors are connected to create value, and also the product moves from the farmer. We see him with fertilizer in his hands, he's growing, then it goes to the traders, and finally it ends up to the consumer, maybe even abroad. There are so many options for creating value. On this slide you see many. Creating value, first you need to produce quantity and quality. That means that also according to quality, grading is important. Different varieties may have different values. Different value chain actors can package, they can sort. Consumers like maybe vegetables of different color and different taste. For certain products, traceability and certification is very important. Transport brings the production closer to the consumer, so there are so many operations that are possible. And along the value chain, the value is created, so you go from $5 maybe to $100. Another way of saying the same thing, so many activities by input providers. Farmers, they can harvest, they dry, they thresh, winnow, sort, grade, store, bulk, transport. Not necessarily they do all those activities. Processors, they can of course process, they can package, they can grade. Traders, an important role is market intelligence, knowing where the consumers are and bringing it to the consumers, packaging. And finally it reaches to the consumer, and the consumer prepares and eats. So when making a drawing of value chains, show the activities that are done by the different actors. So the first step, producer, trader, retailer, consumer, you can specify what the farmer is doing. Maybe he's doing grading, sorting and transporting. The trader is maybe processing, packaging and transporting again. The retailer is doing the marketing, repackaging and distribution to the consumers. And we advise to use the same color for indicating the activities that are done by the different value chain operators.
Just to have a little addition, if you group them in the same color code, it will help you to see, okay, the trader is selling the product that he took from you, or she, and then he did the processing, packaging and transporting, which has costs already, and then after reducing those costs he puts a margin to sell the product in a higher price. So when we see the traders selling their products in a higher price, we always have to try to understand what are the activities that creates value and that makes them spend money, but then get their money that they spent, but then also to get benefit from the activity they carried on. That would be it.
So just adding to what Melike mentions, each actor is doing different activities and each activity is linked to a certain price or a certain cost. And this we call it transactions and transmissions. The value chain actors are therefore linked through inputs and outputs. So what one input for the farmer is an output and then it's again an input for the trader. So for example, in the breadfruit value chain, the input is the breadfruit. The farmer will do maybe some grading and sorting. And this creates an output, and the input for the trader is then taking the product and processing and packaging it, and that is again another output for the next actor. So therefore, these are transactions and payments. And that's why communication and collaboration is so important along the chain, so that this works really well. Along the chain, therefore, the product changes for money. And every step, the product gets a new owner. So the two important questions we have to ask is how much is paid at each level and what are the costs, so we can determine what each actor gains in their own step along the chain. If we take the example of the coffee value chain, we're starting with the producer, the raw beans, and you see the cup of coffee. And but in between there are many steps, and for each step the product increases in value. But also each actor has to do something to give input. For example, roasting and then packaging, that will increase the price and the value will be added. And this is important to visualize while you do your value chain mapping. So you have started with the actors, from the producer to the consumer. You have listed each activity of each actor and also the product that is moving with each actor. But then it is really important to say what are the costs involved, what are the costs for grading, and what will the farmer get back, or what are the costs for packaging, but what is the cost that the retailer pays back to the trader. So we can determine in each step what people will earn.